All right, Michael, you ready to go?
Yep, ready when you are.
All right, sounds good. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Live at ServiceNow. We're going to talk about how to redefine your workflows with Celonis and ServiceNow. We're excited that our partner Celonis is joining us for this. Just a couple housekeeping things to go through here. First of all, obviously, we may have some forward-looking statements in this content, and all those forward-looking statements. Obviously, it might be new products or new features, or we might talk about something that's coming in a future release. We're under no obligation to make sure that that happens. But for the most part, we'll be talking about everything that's released, and so there shouldn't be too much of that. And this is part of a series, right? This is an interactive event series live on ServiceNow. There'll be a link that goes into chat, or you can grab this QR code to see the full schedule of all the meetups and everything that happened out on live at ServiceNow. But we really appreciate you all being here today. We're going to save time at the end for a Q&A. So definitely use the Q&A feature rather than the chat. If you have questions along the way, we'll be gathering those and answer those at the end. We're also recording this presentation, so we'll share it with the ServiceNow community as well. So if you miss something, you can go back and see that. And then you'll be getting a short survey at the end of this. We really appreciate your feedback. We use the feedback to really drive future sessions and to provide feedback for the speakers to make sure that the content we're providing is of the highest quality and the most relevant to our customers and our partners. So thanks for joining us today. Again, my name is John Summit. I'm the Global Director of our Global Director for Sales for our finance and supply chain workflows. So we'll get into what those are here in a little bit, but I want to let Mike introduce himself as well.
Yep. Hey, everyone. My name is Michael O'Brien. I'm from Celonis, and I'm the ServiceNow Solution Lead for North America. And I think with that, we can just do a quick brief on kind of the partnership here, where it stems from, and why we came together. So ServiceNow and Celonis have been strategic technology partners with each other for a little over a year and a half now. And the story behind that was that we have the vision to make the invisible visible and redefine how work flows. And we do that with Celonis on one hand is the intelligence layer that services insights across your business processes. So Celonis, for the past 10 years, has been the leading process mining and execution management platform for enterprise business. And what we specialize in is revealing hidden inefficiencies that organizations can't typically see. And so while we are the layer for intelligence, we also needed someone to be the engagement layer driving the automation, right? The actual muscle that makes workflow the way it needs to be. And who better than ServiceNow, right? So ServiceNow's leading low-code workflow platform actually makes the world work with better digital experiences, working smarter, faster, and better. So the two of us come together to really, redefine how work flows moving forward into the future.
Yeah, and we're excited to be here today. I'm going to let Michael continue, but we're going to focus on source to pay today. Celonis and ServiceNow partner in many different spaces, but today we're going to focus on your source to pay process.
And so to get us started and to kind of frame ourselves within the source to pay kind of space, we wanted to just start with some quick questions. So within the source to pay, end-to-end process, what business objectives are most important to you guys out here today? We'll give it about 30 seconds and then see what answers we see. Okay, interesting so far.
Definitely. And for those that are answering increased productivity, if you feel like it, I'd love to see in the chat just kind of for you, what is productivity? Where in the source to pay process are you looking to improve your productivity? We'll get into some of our ideas, but I'd love to hear what you're thinking.
And that's a pretty good segue into the next poll question, actually, I think, because as we kind of go one level deeper, right, within productivity, if we jump to the next slide, John.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, all good. Right. So when it comes to increasing productivity, do any of these metrics resonate in terms of where you guys feel like you may be losing productivity or could do better in? Curious to see where we think productivity is being successful and maybe not as successful these days. Very interesting. Pretty even spread so far.
Yeah, definitely. Very normal what we hear from our customers.
Okay, on-time delivery taking the lead. We do all like to receive our goods on time, whether in business or personal Amazon deliveries. All right, I think that's a pretty good start to get us understanding kind of how we're thinking about source to pay. And I'll hand it back over to John, who's going to take you through some recent learnings from ServiceNow and IDC.
Perfect. So, when we talk about procure to pay, and we had IDC do a study, and we looked at like where are the challenges in procure to pay, and we've got a couple different slides where we'll talk about this. But what we really see is there's tons of fragmented procurement processes, siloed data sources. Different parts of the procure to pay process have different data sources. There's really a poor experience for stakeholders and very low visibility into order processes. And just when we look at finance and procurement, they're spending a lot of time on very low value tasks. They're answering a lot of emails on status updates. They're taking a lot of phone calls on how do I do this or status updates. And there's really not a lot of work being done on really increasing spend under management. They're really focused on a lot of admin type tasks and a lot of just updates, and not really focused on increasing spend under management. And when we look at that, work is broken, and it's really broken in a number of different places. It's certainly broken for people. There's departmental silos. Everyone's being asked to do more with less. When we look at the processes, and that's where Celonis comes into this, we really look at the process, and there's laws and regulations we have to have. There's geopolitical complexity. The process is just broken. And then when we look at technology, there's siloed systems. Every department has their own system. And quite frankly, when we really look at how work gets done, a lot of times it's in Excel, a lot of times it's in SharePoint, or that favorite email tool, or the favorite process tool of everybody, which is email. And so how do we really fix this broken, inefficient work? And that's really what we're going to get into today when we look at our source to pay. So we're really going to start talking about transforming source to pay with digital workflows. And before we get into that, we had one more poll question we wanted to get into. And so what we want to know is, how many underlying systems and solutions are you using today to support your sourcing, procurement, accounts payable, supplier management? I mean, if you think about it, you have ERP systems, you have OCR systems, you probably have one or two BPO tools, analytics, RPA, and exactly what we're seeing on some of the answers coming through. We're seeing that many of you have 4 or greater systems. We'll just give it another minute or another couple seconds here before we end the poll. But very, very common what we see across our customers. Okay, we can go ahead and end that, and I'll share the results real quick. Sorry about that. But as you see this, everybody answered 4 or more systems. So let's go and take a look at that. Sorry about that. Let me move through here. Okay, so what we're hearing our customers say is exactly what we just shared through the poll questions. And teams are really struggling to do work. And back to that IDC study, we found that 47% of the work that's being done by finance and procurement is really non-standard inquiries, issues, and other requests. They're spending their time doing admin work. They're really trying to cobble together all these siloed systems. They're doing, what we would call swivel chair work, working in one system, then going, they have 3 or 4 monitors. They're going back and forth between all those monitors. And there's just really a poor experience for end users. And there's just mountains of work to onboard and offboard suppliers and to really make the process of source to pay happen. And so what we're doing at ServiceNow with the help of Celonis looking at your processes, we're really coming up with a single engagement layer. So if you look at your source to pay from beginning to end and all those underlying systems, we're providing a single engagement layer. So whether you're talking about sourcing, contracting, you're onboarding your suppliers, you're trying to manage the ESG and risk of your suppliers, you're looking at your order management, you're looking at how you receive goods, you're looking at how you go through and receive invoices and pay those invoices. All that process is done with a single engagement layer with ServiceNow and our source to pay operations product. And so what I wanted to do is just kind of level set everybody on when we're talking to source to pay, what are we talking about? What does this look like? And, what is ServiceNow bringing to the table? So when we look at source to pay, we have 3 distinct products in our source to pay product set. We have procurement and sourcing and procurement operations, supplier lifecycle operations, and accounts payable operations. And so those 3 products are represented across the slide here. And if you look, at the center of the slide, we have the bigger bubbles that are representing the personas that are involved in those processes, whether they're employees or procurement managers, suppliers, supplier managers, vendor managers. And then also when we get to the payment side, the employees or suppliers as well. And you look at the bottom, all those bullets are the different types of work that get done across the source to pay lifecycle. And the smaller bubbles across the top, those are different parts of our platform that we can leverage, whether they're portals or the shopping hub or the workspaces that are specifically designed for those personas across the source to pay process. We're bringing the right information in a way that can be actionable, and then bringing standardization across the process from beginning to end so that then we can automate that process. And we can use information from Celonis to really understand where the gaps and the inefficiencies are in that process. And then we have the ability to surface the right information and then automate the process where it makes sense. So if you think about it, if we can tie all those systems together, whether it's your sourcing system, your ERP system, your contract management system, your accounts payable system, and all the work that you have out there in different catalogs and in places where you maybe have different SharePoint forms and different requests, we're going to pull all that together and provide one single engagement layer for the source to pay process beginning to end. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Michael, and we're going to take a look at another poll question.
Yep. So this is the last poll question, I promise, but I think it'll all come together. So, John just walked you through all the different kind of systems, sub-processes, and personas involved in source to pay. And so the question ultimately becomes how confident are you if you were asked to describe your current workflow for any of these core processes today? Do you think you can, read it like the back of your hand? Do you think there's maybe some things you might miss, or is it so, just misconstrued across multiple systems that you wouldn't be able to confidently describe it? All right, we have some answers rolling in. We're at a tie for 1 and 1. Hopefully you can see if someone can break the tie.
Somebody needs to break the tie, exactly. All right.
Yeah. Well, don't want to be hung up on this one too long, right? We had a yes and a no, but I think ultimately is that, and at least in my experience and with Celonis' experience over the past 10 years looking at these processes, there isn't necessarily always a right answer. What we do know is that processes don't always run the way we expect them to. And you can kind of really break that down into 3 main ideas that we've represented here going left to right. So At a certain point in time, the process was designed. And in that design, it was the ideal flow. It's what you might call the happy path. It was steps 1 through 5, and this is how you do something. As we all know, businesses and groups and industries, regulations evolve over time. And so everyone's business has to adjust to it. And maybe there are some new kind of pathways, some different requirements for a process. And so the business thinks that the process runs how you see in the middle section here, where it's still relatively straightforward with some exceptions here and there. However, if you look over to the right, how the process actually runs, and this is actually a real screenshot from the Celonis platform. This is how all of our customers' processes end up looking at the end of the day. The bigger the company, the bigger the enterprise, the more customers they support, the more of a spaghetti diagram you're going to see here. And the only, not the only way, but we think about the most effective way here at Celonis and ServiceNow is that if you really want to modernize and improve the experience of your processes and your workflow, you have to bring a magnifying glass to your processes to truly understand where work is broken, so you know how to prescriptively fix it. And so that's what we want to represent here, is that within source to pay, there's going to be a lot of things and variants that you may not be aware of, but we're here to shine a light on that. And so what I wanted to show next was a bit of a variation of the slide that John showed you before, right? If you recall, the ServiceNow source to pay platform is going to be able to facilitate your work and improve your experience, everything from source to pay all the way on the right-hand side. And John also showed you that they have the ability to integrate with all of those transactional systems that you're probably using, right? I think we had everybody was saying 4+ systems to support their processes. What I also wanted to add here was that when you combine the ServiceNow source to pay platform with the Celonis EMS platform, you're able to take process intelligence that Celonis picks up on across your transactional systems and feed them into the ServiceNow platform. But the idea being that now that you know prescriptively where your process breaks down, you can more accurately deploy and leverage the great capabilities of ServiceNow's S2P product within your enterprise. So we're really just trying to bring, again, that magnifying glass so that you can get the most out of these great products. And so that was a bit of an architecture, right? A pretty high level. I want to just take a moment to talk about what does the methodology look like? Okay, like that all sounds great, but how do you actually put this into practice? And what Celonis and ServiceNow came together on was I'll call it a catchphrase. It's a bit of a slogan. It's find, frame, and fix. And the idea is that with Celonis being able to X-ray all of your business processes, you can really confidently and objectively find inefficiencies and then frame the value of the impact that they're having on your business processes. Once you have that business case, which is completely data-driven by Celonis, you can now say, okay, how do I actually want to fix the problems I've identified? And so that's where we come together with ServiceNow to say, hey, you guys have all the great tools, capabilities, workflows, portals, the list goes on to actually fix the laundry list of problems that we've identified with Celonis. And when we think about fixing, we typically think about it in 3 high-level categories. There's modernizing, there's remediating, and there's enriching. And I'll just briefly touch on what those mean. So the idea with modernizing is that Celonis has looked at your process, and you as a process improvement team, as a company, have decided that the underlying systems that currently support our process have really not evolved or come up to speed with what we need to do or how to support or operate our business today. And so rather than trying to make little fixes here and there, we would benefit more from just kind of strategically replatforming our process onto ServiceNow. And so the idea there is that you would really want to take almost all of the products and features of the ServiceNow source to pay platform and have that control your process, right? So you're pretty much taking all of those old 4 systems and saying, I'm just going to do this all in ServiceNow. That's one way. The other idea is remediating. And remediating is that even if you do say strategically replatform everything onto ServiceNow, again, like we said before, businesses, processes, regulations, environments, customer bases will continue to evolve. And so your business will have to react to that. And so when you have Celonis looking over your business processes and our data models are able to pick up on everything that happens in real time, we're able to identify undesired business scenarios that you would like to, or you would ultimately want to remediate. And, the old way of remediating issues would be you'd have to wait for that problem to present itself. And sometimes that wasn't always the fastest way of doing things, right? Sometimes things go unnoticed and it's not until days later that it's like, you're like, oh, shoot, this is something that we should have been on top of. Well, now with Celonis, you can have Celonis do the monitoring for you and automatically trigger a case or workflow or a communication in ServiceNow to an end user so that they can address it more proactively. So the idea of remediating is that Celonis is pushing those situations, those scenarios to ServiceNow, so that as the layer of engagement, they're prompting and helping users address things more quickly. Lastly, we have the idea of enriching. And the idea here is that we know that a lot of people already use ServiceNow as their day-to-day operational tool. Wouldn't it be great if we could also embed process intelligence from Celonis into those operational views that you're already using on the ServiceNow platform? And so kind of opposite of the way where Celonis was pushing situations into ServiceNow and data into ServiceNow, this is now about ServiceNow querying Celonis so that it can fetch the relevant process intelligence and context that users would benefit from. And so that was a quick summary of the different ways that we find frame fix. But ultimately, what it comes down to at the end of the day is that we're able to measure that impact continuously. And we have this, what we call a value lab. So it's not just a one-time project, but you're able to do this over and over again, and your business runs as optimally as possible. Now, trying to go, again, one level deeper, right? So we did an architecture, we talked about a methodology. How do you actually kind of, work on this boots on the ground, might be your next question. And within source to pay, we take a very prescriptive approach, not only to this process, but any process that we partner on. And so what ServiceNow and Celonis look at together is that we know that there's a happy path for a process, right? For source to pay, it could be, you generalize it from you create the purchase request all the way through you clear that invoice and you make payment. But that process is really underpinned by business objectives, and those objectives are measured by metrics, and those metrics are either driven in the right direction or in the wrong direction by specific opportunities. And so we know that source to pay and all kind of digital transformation, process improvement projects are really business driven at the core. And so what we come to do with our customers is say, if you want to focus on labor productivity, which I think our first poll highlighted today, all the way, or any other topic from supply reliability, or you want to optimize working capital, right? These are all supported by key metrics that you're all familiar with that you probably see here. And then even one layer deeper, those key metrics are supported by, or driven by, I should say, by certain opportunities, whether it's automation, whether it's delivery changes, whether it's invoicing terms. Ultimately, what we want to get to here is that because Celonis is able to look at your processes at a very granular level, we're able to work bottoms up here so that we can help you drive that labor productivity to a better place, or maybe that working capital optimization to a better place. And we do that by saying, hey, ServiceNow, we know exactly what's going wrong in your processes. We know you guys have the tools to help make it better, faster, stronger. Let's work on it prescriptively. So that's what we use here when it comes to, again, architecture, methodology, and actual approach. And I'll hand it back over to John here, who's going to take you a little more in depth on some of those fixing capabilities that ServiceNow provides.
Thanks, Michael. That was amazing. And, when we talk about digital transformation, it's a great buzzword and everybody wants to have digital transformation. But look, I've been here at ServiceNow for 12 years. And what I see a lot of times is people take an old broken process and move it to ServiceNow, a really great innovative tool, and you have a bad process on a great tool. And so you still end up with not a great user experience. You don't end up driving the metrics in the way that you want to drive them. So what Celonis allows us to do is to really look at that process before we start implementing ServiceNow, understand where those gaps and inefficiencies are, understand where we can use ServiceNow to change our work and to move levers to really change these metrics that we're looking at. So particularly to source to pay, we're going to talk about our source to pay operations, and we're really going to talk about how does ServiceNow drive source to pay to manage our employee requests, manage our suppliers, and manage our payments. So when we look at managing our employees' requests, we're going to really talk about procurement operations. And that's going to provide us a single entry point for making purchases. It's going to allow us to automate intake and to have intelligent routing and really get that increase to our spend under management. Because we know when we manage our spend that sourcing and procurement is able to save our company 20, 30% on the dollar. And so how do we really increase that spend under management? How do we get to 80 to 90% of our total spend being spent that's under management? And really, how do we just increase efficiency across our procurement and sourcing operations? Along with that, how do we manage our suppliers? How do we manage the full life cycle of our suppliers? How do we bring them on? How do we manage them throughout the life? How do we communicate back and forth with our suppliers? How do we increase the efficiency with our suppliers? And how do we increase our efficiency of our vendor managers? And how do I really manage suppliers for risk, ESG, and other key metrics that I really want to manage my suppliers for? And then once we actually manage our sourcing and we manage our suppliers, how do I really ensure that I'm managing the accounts payable process? How do I make that as automated and streamlined as possible? How do I reduce errors? How do I reduce fraud? And how do I increase efficiency in my accounts payable? So that's what we're really going to look at as we dive into ServiceNow source to pay operations. So let's just look at procurement operations for a minute. And we're really going to talk about this idea of a single entry point. Many of our organizations already use ServiceNow as a single entry point for IT, for employee workflows, for their customers coming in and external entities into ServiceNow or into their organization. But procurement, they're really left, procurement and finance is really left with kind of archaic ways. People interface with Google Forms, or they're doing a SharePoint form, or that great efficiency tool of email. And so there's no standard way on how to request services from procurement and sourcing. And there's really no workflow behind those requests. Maybe there's a form that I fill out, but at the end of the day, it just generates an email that goes into an email box. One of the organizations we worked with, a large aerospace manufacturer, had over 1,000 inboxes for sourcing, where people, when they needed to source something, would send an email to one of those 1,000 inboxes. Think about just the sheer magnitude of managing over 1,000 inboxes, the emails that are coming into that. How does an organization do that? How do they have visibility to that? And so that's really what we're trying to do with procurement operations, first and foremost, is that single entry point. People can come in and request to purchase something, whether that's something as simple as I need a laptop, or I need a microphone, or something out of a catalog, or whether that's something much more complex where I need some type of a service, whether that's a marketing service, or maybe I need I need contingent labor. However, I'm going to go and request services and goods from my sourcing department. I want to have one way that I do that. And when they get in there, they're going to be made up of dynamic forms and workflows. So I'm not just going to only facilitate the request, but then I want to have, based on category or whatever criteria that you're selecting, that I route that to the right person. I am able to get the information up front in a very easy to understand way. We all shop every day on Amazon, on bestbuy.com, or wherever we go out and buy goods in our personal life. We're able to do that today. Or even if I need a service, I'm able to go out and request a taxi on Uber in a very modern way. How come when I go to work, I'm sending an email and hoping that somebody gets it and it gets to the right person, and 3 or 4 weeks later I find out, hey, this is in process? And what that tends to do is it tends to drive people to find their own ways. And they go and they're out really doing their own procurement work, bringing bids back to sourcing and saying, hey, I have these 3 bids. I need to make this purchase. So what we really want to be able to do is allow sourcing and procurement to do their work and do it in a very easy way, and have a single way for our employees across the organization to interface with them. And then when that work comes in, we have a procurement workspace where finance and procurement can really see their work. Category managers can understand all the requests that they have to do. We can prioritize those. We can communicate back with the employees. They can see all their work that's out there in one common workspace and kind of see what's happening. So that's really what procurement operations is doing. And to dive down a little bit deeper into that, we have this idea of guided buying. So for years, sourcing tools have been out there. They provide a guided buying process, but it's really designed more for the procurement professional and less for the end user. And specifically, even if I do have a sourcing tool that has a guided buying process, my end users aren't used to going into that tool. They do that once in a while. So what we're able to do is lay on top of that process and provide a very Amazon-like process through Shopping Hub, provide a consumer grade experience for purchasing, like I said, either single items or multi-complex workflows to look at, hey, how do I do a complex services project or something like that? So that's what Shopping Hub does. Obviously, we want our end users to self-service as much as possible. So we provide case and knowledge management just the same as we do in IT or employee or customer today. For finance, we're allowing them to provide case and knowledge management and allow individuals to self-service as much as possible, and then enhance visibility. As these requests come in, we're able to deliver insights on spending and performance and really start to look at the process. We started with process transformation with the data that Celonis provided us. We continue to get data from Celonis on the process where that's at with the enrichment. And then ServiceNow is able to put all that into a dashboard and be able to drive insights on spend and performance management. So that's sourcing and procurement operations. I want to dive a little bit into what supplier operations is. And again, it's this idea of a single entry point where suppliers can come in and have a single entry point. They can go and view we can onboard them. They can view the statuses. They have the ability to communicate with the procurement team. I work in sales at ServiceNow. Every day I'm dealing with the procurement teams of our organizations. And 9 times out of 10, I'm doing that via a phone call or an email. It'd be great if I had a portal to go into and could communicate with them through that portal. I could understand where my status, where my request was at, what the status of that was at, and procurement could task me with if they need more information, they need a pricing update or whatever. They can send that to me. I get it in an automated fashion. I get it on my mobile device. I really understand how to interact with our organizations. So that's the supplier portal. There's a supplier management workspace for vendor managers and supplier managers that they, again, can see all of their work. They can see the suppliers that they're dealing with and if they're where things are at, and they can communicate effectively back. And I also have a supplier profile, and I can see the analytics of a given supplier, and I can see the cases that get open against a supplier. I can see the risk. I can see the ESG metrics. So all that I have in one place in my supplier operations portal. And then accounts payable. Once we get the good or service into the organization, we consume that, we have a goods receipt. How do I know that I should really go and pay that invoice? Or how do I know that it's a valid invoice that I should pay? Is it somebody that's sending me an invoice that's not correct? Or is it really a valid invoice? And so through accounts payable operations, we have the ability to automate invoice processing through our OCR solution, but it's an AI-driven OCR solution. We're using our document intelligence so that we can get 85 to 90% of the invoices that come in automated, and we can pull that information into the system, and we can fill out, match that with a goods receipt, match it with a purchase order, ensure that everything is there, and we can automate the payment processing and send that directly to my ERP system. Again, finance requests, I have one place where people can go check the status. They can confirm their goods receipt. We can automate the processing of all that and have one place that employees interact with finance. And then again, an accounts payable workspace. So the AP team can have one place to look at all their requests, understand the progress of those, and I can prioritize those. And I can ensure that we're getting the discounts that we deserve to get, because the approvals are going through a very visible process, and we're automating the work, and we're doing that in a fashion that makes sense and is based on my discounts and where approvals can be. So again, all three of those come together in sourcing, procurement operations, supplier lifecycle operations, and accounts payable operations to bring one consistent source to pay solution from beginning to end. And we have customers that have lowered their spend and improve their procurement in weeks and not years. When we look at this, first of all, we're not saying you need to change any of your underlying transaction systems. Whether you have an ERP system or a sourcing system, and say you're running Reba on top of SAP, we're not saying you have to rip and replace all those systems that you have investment in. We're saying that we can come in and lay on top of those systems, and we can drive that engagement layer and drive those processes with the map that Celonis provides us and provide change in weeks, not years. So if you look, here's a couple examples out there. There's a global sports apparel company where using Celonis, they've been able to look at some of their procurement processes. And then we've been able to come in and provide an automated shopping experience to their employees. And so they're estimating over $1 billion in savings just because they're able to increase spend under management, and they're able to streamline how their employees request goods or services, and it's going through procurement and increasing spend under management rather than just a bunch of off catalog purchases that are happening out there on P cards and other places. And so they're estimating over $1 billion in savings by fiscal year 2025. And I mentioned that leading aerospace manufacturer, they're thinking, this is their number, they're expecting over a 300% increased ROI using a global standard supplier workflow platform. So now I'm taking that work out of all these inboxes, and my communication with my suppliers are going through one supplier portal. I can automate all that work, and I can make them unseen visible. So with the use of Celonis and ServiceNow, our customers are seeing this spend and production, or their spend and cost reduction immediately. So I want to save some time for questions. Definitely toss those out in the Q&A. I think we have Jennifer watching that. Jennifer, are there any questions that we can answer?
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions in the queue right now. And Michael, I think you were prepared to address them. So would you go ahead and take on that challenge for us?
Yeah, happy to. So Jordan came in with a pretty good question. And so he seems to work for a consulting firm, and they want to think about Celonis and ServiceNow offerings, which is great. And as John and I can both tell you, we heavily rely on our SI community to help get these connected solutions out in the field. And so I think Jordan's question is around kind of how does the new Celonis pricing model kind of impact this partnership? How does it impact the connected solution? And the question was specific to ITSM, but I'm just going to answer it at a more kind of just higher level. So Celonis has moved from a consumption to process-based licensing model. And we actually found that this benefits our technology partnership, specifically with ServiceNow, more so than the consumption model did. Specifically because, as you know, the way that ServiceNow's products work, there's an ITSM module, there's a S2P module, there's an HR module, right? And now it's a little bit easier to say, okay, if I'm going to do S2P, I know I have my ServiceNow source to pay module, and I know that I need to buy the Celonis S2P or procurement and AP process licenses. So really, we see that it's more aligned with this new pricing mechanism. But hopefully that was a good first pass answer, and I'm happy to follow up offline to go into more specific details.
Any other questions out there, Jenny? I didn't see any others.
I'm not seeing any others either at the moment.
All right. Well, we appreciate everybody joining us today and really being open to this idea of redesigning your source to pay process using Celonis and ServiceNow. Again, Celonis provides that X-ray into that process. You can really understand the gaps and inefficiencies in your process, and ServiceNow provides that fix. Using our source to pay operations modules, we have the ability to change how you do your work and digitally transform your source to pay operations from sourcing all the way through to accounts payable. And we do that with the help of Celonis. We're able to see those gaps and inefficiencies, and then we're able to really drive true digital transformation rather than taking a poor process and putting it on a really new and innovative platform. So I appreciate Celonis's being here today with us and sharing how they can map those processes. And we appreciate everybody joining us. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself or Michael at Celonis. And we look forward to seeing you on that and future live at ServiceNow sessions. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone.